Okay, let's talk about last night, hey? And one of the big talking points from last night is did Big Ange get his team selection wrong? So we're out of the cup. He made so many changes, and so many fans now are thinking, did he make too many changes? In fact, they do think he made too many changes. What was he thinking? This was an opportunity for us to progress in a competition that we have a realistic possibility of challenging and winning. So why throw the opportunity away by making 9 changes, and those 9 changes are players that we all know are just not good enough. They don't cut the mustard. So why, Ange? Why would you make 9 changes when we've had a good bit of momentum and Fulham are there for the taking? And Fulham obviously on a bit of good form. The last result was a good 2-2 draw against Arsenal with 10 men. So why would you think you can put a B-string team out and win that game? Well, let me say a few things about this, because I'm definitely in the camp of I do think he made too many changes. It wouldn't be what I would have done, but actually in my prediction video, I did say he'd make a lot of changes. I think he probably should have made 3 or 4 maximum, but I was expecting him to make a lot more than that, and he didn't disappoint. But I wasn't expecting him to make 9 changes, because that's effectively a whole new team there. Maybe with the exception of Van der Ven. You could even put Richarlison there, because many of us fans, I'm not necessarily in the camp fully yet, but many of us are not having Richarlison. So by definition, the only first team player he had in there was Mickey Van der Ven, who's only just recently joined the club. So for all intents and purposes, he played a complete different team in a game that I think, as fans, we want to win that game because we want to have some success. We've been starved of it. We're tired of being mocked about no trophies and so on and so forth. And so we're viewing this team selection as almost treacherous. Like, how dare you make these changes when this is a competition that we could and should be trying to win, because we're not in Europe, and even if we were, we're not likely to win it. We're not going to win the Premier League anytime soon. In the FA Cup, yeah, but generally speaking, the bigger teams tend to play their stronger teams in there, so there's a bit more competition in that competition. And look, these are valid points. These are this makes sense. However, I think we need to step back a bit and look at the big picture. So Ange is there to rebuild a squad that has been underperforming for so many years. We know that because we've been watching Spurs for many, many years, many of us for our whole lives. But in terms of the squad of players that are there right now, we've been watching many of those players for years. We know they're not good enough, right? And many of us wouldn't have those players in the team. However, Ange Postecoglou doesn't have the same, exposure to these people as we have over years. Yes, he gets a closer look in training. He sees things that we don't see. But, the way you read... But if you take the perspective of he has to understand what is at his disposal. He's a manager. He's got to manage resources. And the better he can understand those resources, the best he can utilize and manage them. So, for all intents and purposes, yeah, sure, he's had a little bit of a pre-season. He's got to see players up close in pre-season friendlies. He's got an idea of who can do what and the kind of attributes he's looking for. But you don't really know people or what people are capable of until you throw them in a situation and see for yourself. This would be like me or any of us saying, look, let's say, we joined a new workplace and somebody came up to us and said, hey, those 2, 3, 4, or those group of people over there, stay away from them because they're just bad apples, right? Now, that person who's telling you that or telling us that may well be telling the truth, but you're going to probably want to make your own assessment about that. You're going to want to see for yourself. You may not come to the same conclusion. You may see things that other people don't see. And so it's the same thing with the team. Yeah, we already know that a lot of those players aren't good enough. And I'm sure he has an idea some of those players aren't good enough as well. But the only time you really know if someone really is up to the mustard is when you put them in real situations and see how they respond to real pressure. Pre-season is not a pressure situation. So in all honesty, this is really his first real opportunity to see how his squad that he's inheriting and the thing that he wants to build, how do they respond in real conditions. There's work experience and then there's on the job doing things. You're in the water. And so I think he needs that. And obviously, we don't have the privilege or the gift of having European competitions. So where we can, try out a few games. We've got 6 games. We played in the group stages, 2 legs, or if we're in Europa League. And so he doesn't have that. So he's only got small opportunities. And one of the things is that a lot of managers, or Ange is not going to have much time on the coaching ground with a lot of these players, especially after the international break. So when is he going to have the opportunity to really learn about his players in the real live situation? He isn't. In the Premiership, right? So, and that will happen, but that probably will happen either due to injuries, suspensions, maybe a little bit of fatigue, dip of form. But ultimately, these are the opportunities. And I think that there is a bit of an overreaction. There's a bit of an overreaction to his selection. And don't get me wrong, I think, like I said to you, I don't agree with it. I think he made too many. But I think we need to kind of just look at the bigger picture here. We got to look at our own expectations. There's no way you go from rebuilding, being so poor to then thinking about we should be winning a trophy. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think part of this is down to the fact that we've had a good start in the season and we've been playing good football. So we've got a glimpse of the potential that we can actually provide and deliver, right? And so we're thinking, yeah, you know what? We've had some 3 good performances. It's early days and we're looking good. And so if we can build upon that, there's no reason why we shouldn't be challenging and winning these domestic cups. And and I understand that logic, but it is short-sighted. At the end of the day, it's just 3 games. And yes, don't let those 3 games dictate your expectations. The expectations is, before we saw any of that, we was taking a chance on a manager that hasn't really played or managed, in the top leagues in Europe or around the world. Even though he's done well where he's been, we haven't seen him in a competition where, you kind of prove your stripes. Do you know what I mean? Like, so he's an unknown quantity or entity at this level. So again, what are our expectations? Do we think he's going to come in and just blow everyone out of the water? It's an unrealistic expectation. Also, are we expected to win the FA Cup or the League Cup in the first season? Again, we got so much dead wood that it's just not realistic. So we need to temper our expectations. We can be disappointed. And yeah, I'm disappointed because Fulham are there for the taking. But even if we beat Fulham, I don't see it as a competition that automatically we're going to win. We can get to the quarterfinals, semi-finals and still get knocked out. The real key here is Ange needs to learn about his squad of players. He needs to learn about his players. He's just met them. So he needs to know. And the only way he's going to know is by taking risks and taking moments in the season where he believes is a good moment. And obviously, his bread and butter from the board is going to be in the league. Yeah, they would want a trophy, especially for this season, right? It would be nice, but I don't think that's the remit. And so I think we have to look at his selection in the context of what is he there to do. So he's there to rebuild a team. He's there to bring a brand of football that we enjoy again. Now, obviously, we didn't enjoy it too much yesterday because a lot of those players that played were players that we wouldn't want to see in that squad anymore. So, of course, we didn't get a good, experience watching the game. But this is just a process, I think sometimes we, as fans, we kind of, we get a bit too carried away. And, yeah. And at the end of the day, I think that, there's more to it than just team selections. He's got to manage the dressing room. He's got to manage a squad of players of 25. There's morale. There's you got to keep people on side, and a lot of those fringe players know that they're probably not going to get opportunities in the Premier League, so he's got to give them opportunities in the cups. If not, you can start to create a situation in the squad and in the dressing room that is not helpful to his overall objectives. And his overall objective is to improve the style of play and bring entertainment to the fans, which was us, right? And then obviously build a squad that's able to compete, i.e., in competitions like that, FA Cup, and even in Europe and in the league. But that's not going to happen after a few games. And so let's just try to see where he's coming from here, what he needs to do. He needs to understand that we know those players very well. We know them inside out. We've seen Davinson Sanchez get turned inside out. We're not surprised to see Davinson Sanchez have the game that he had, right? We're not surprised to see Højbjerg, Lo Celso, Skippy not good enough. We know that, right? We've seen it over and over again. We've seen it in so many situations. We've seen them in so many real life games that we know. But he hasn't. So we need to give him that space to come to his own realization and understand him, so that when he makes his decisions, he's making his decisions based on what he knows and not what the sentiment is around the club and around the players. So that's just my thought on that. I do think he got the selections wrong, or more to the point, I think he made too many, right? I think he probably shouldn't have changed more than half the team. 4 or 5 at an absolute maximum. 3 or 4 is probably the sweet spot there. But I understand it. I get it, and I can see that, it's more than just one game. We've got to be able to see the forest for the trees. You've got to see that ultimately this is about the evolution of a squad and rebuilding. And, one game against Fulham in the Cup doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. We want to see progress, and obviously we'll go to Burnley on Saturday, and if win, lose or draw, to be honest with you, it's about seeing the progress. If Spurs play well and lose, this is what we're not going to want to lose that game, of course, but we're here to see progress. Is he taking us in the right direction? And ultimately, so far, the signs are yes, even though we got knocked out of the cup yesterday. So that's my thoughts on Ange's team selection and whether he made too many changes. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Why? And do you think he made too many changes? Do you think it was a mistake to do that? Why do you think that? Leave your comments and thoughts in the comments.